Hey Fix listeners, I want to take a minute to give you all an update on our DPO, Smile Now Dental Group. In case you haven't heard, we've been opening up locations all across the country for doctors just like yourselves. We started several offices this year to show proof of concept, and it's been off to the races ever since. So if you're looking for an equitable partnership opportunity where you can have a profitable business that supports you doing full arch, I'd love to hear from you. We're looking to add several locations in the next year and want to offer the training and support necessary to make one of those yours. If you'd like to learn more, you can go ahead and hit me up on Instagram at Dr. Tyler J. Tolbert, or shoot me an email at tyler@smilenowdentalgroup.com and say hey. Now, without further ado, let's get back to the show. My name is Dr. Tyler Tolbert.
And I'm Dr. Soren Poppy,
And you're listening to the Fix Podcast.
your source for all things implant dentistry.
So we talk about current trends in full arch and things that are sort of emergent and they become very popular and often talked about. And one of these subjects is that of photogrammetry. So this is something that came out. I mean, I think for me, I really haven't been in the game that long, but photogrammetry came after I got out of school. That's how recent it is, and I won't give away my age here, but. So I'm going to lead into our next topic with photogrammetry. So in today's world of immediate load surgery, the surgical and restorative challenges that are associated with full arch practice have really blended together, right? And there's, of course, this huge incentive to do things faster and less appointments. And one of these modalities that's come about is the advent of photogrammetry. So even with the most advanced intraoral scanners, the issue that's being brought up is that there's a difficulty that comes from the inaccuracy that comes from when we're trying to scan cross arch, because there's a lot of stitching. You're taking a lot of photos across the arch. Digitally, the software is trying to stitch these things together, and you're incorporating inaccuracy upon inaccuracy, right? And so photogrammetry comes into the landscape and it says, okay, here's a separate peripheral. You're going to essentially, this is a very rudimentary version of it, but we're going to take a picture of where all the multi-units are in space, in orientation, in relation to one another. It's much truer than cross-arch stitching, right? And this has become very popular and has become a compulsory aspect of what is now the full digital workflow. So Dr. Stanley, in your video, Why I Don't Need Photogrammetry in My Practice, you stated that you were able to circumvent the need for photogrammetry with two principles that you talk about. One is that intraoral scanning is more accurate when the implants or multis are parallel, and full arch scans are more accurate when the implants are closer together. In other words, by placing more implants with an axial configuration and using guided surgery, you were able to capture accurate records using only intraoral scanning. And I do hope that I've characterized that accurately. So Dr. Stanley, could you please expound on that topic and talk a little bit more about it? I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think you captured that really well, Tyler. So
Okay.
for a number of years, we've been doing digital workflow, right? And so we're scanning our full arch cases and we're having great success. And I was shocked because when photogrammetry came on pretty strong, people were like, we're going to photogrammetry. And you would hear these people say, I can't scan across the arch accurately. And you would see the reports that would confirm this. They would have reports. People would put studies up on the podium and say, here's the study. It doesn't work. And I'm like, this is really weird. I don't understand, because in my office it's working. And I was talking to my team members and we just couldn't figure it out. And then I think it was 2 summers ago. It was 2 summers ago, not this last summer, it was the summer before. I was at the Coyce Symposium in Seattle. And Dr. Coyce has a digital specialist. And she was on stage and she was stepping through her annual update on digital technology, digital workflow. And she had a series of different presentations that she was doing. Each one was like a 10 to 15 minute presentation, but she was working her way through it. And one of the things she said was, it was really, I was like, wow, that's interesting. She says, if your scan bodies are parallel, the scanner does a better job of picking them up. And I'm in the audience and I'm like, well, that, as an engineer, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. The scan body should be giving you a coordinate system in space, and it should be telling you where that implant is. That doesn't make any sense. But okay, she said that. And then a little bit later on, she said, if the scan bodies are closer together, so instead of 2 scan bodies further apart, but if the scan bodies are closer together, the scanner does a better job. Well, that one makes sense to everybody, right? Because when the scanner takes a picture, if the 2 implants are in the picture simultaneously, they are referenced to each other, right? That's why a lot of these scan bodies now, they look like the letter T. They screw on and they have like an arm to them. Well, the idea is that if that arm comes close to the next arm, then you're bridging the gap, right? So that makes a lot of sense. So I'm sitting there going, this is interesting. And I said, I think I figured out why our system works. So the first thing is my implants are they're within a couple of degrees of each other in terms of parallel after the multi-units are placed. Because clearly if we do an angled implant, we use an angled multi-unit. But because they were guided, the parallelism of the scan bodies is very parallel. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing is, as an engineer, I over-engineer systems. I don't under-engineer systems. So if they needed 4 implants, they get 5. If they needed 5, they get 6. That's how it goes. We always add like 1 implant. It's a simple method of doing it. And so if you have, say, 6 implants in the maxilla, and you've got a decent AP spread, the implants are close enough together and they're parallel, you can scan it with a regular scanner. You do not need photogrammetry. And I have had so many people hate on me on social media, on YouTube. They're like, you can't do it. You can't do it. I say, I'm doing it every single day. Every single day. Every one of my arches for years has been done this way. And they're like, it can't work. I'm like, stop telling me it can't work. I'm doing it every single day. So once again, if you follow the recipe, you get great results. People, if you're not following this recipe, if you're doing a different recipe, you're not going to get the same results. So if you think about it, if you're freehanding implants, because this is where photogrammetry really has its advantage, right? Your freehanded implants, you don't really know where the implants are going to go. You're going to do an anatomical approach. You're going to flap the ridge. You're going to look for the bone. You're going to look for your landmarks. You're going to place the implants. At the time you're done with that, if they're not really well parallel, and you just do it all on 4 because that's what you're just doing, they're not close enough together. You can't scan it. So that's where photogrammetry makes a lot of sense. You put some photogrammetry on there, and you can scan it, and then do an immediate provisional. Either print it that day or the next day. Some people do it the next day, and that's a workflow that works for a lot of people, right? But the answer is that if you do it the way that we're talking about, you can actually you can do digital scanning with a regular scanner, with a regular scan body, and you can do it all day long. And I'll prove to you that it's accurate. And you know how you prove to you it's accurate? People are like, how do you know? How do you know it's passive? So it's real simple. You just scan the arch twice. Okay? Scan it once, then tell the computer, I'm going to scan it again. You now have 2 identical scans. It's like taking 2 impressions in school. We did two GUI impressions, right? But in this case, we can superimpose those 2 data sets inside the software. And then we can look for error. And if the error is less than 40 microns across the entire arch, you have 2 perfectly accurate scans. And there's no way you're going to do that and just get lucky. You know, they're the same. And we used to do that on every single case. And then one day I asked my assistant, I said, Sarah, can I see the dual scan today? And she goes, well, I stopped doing that. And I said, Sarah, why did you stop doing that? And she says, well, Doc, I'll tell you, they were always accurate every single time. So after, a couple of years of doing this, it was a waste of my time. So she just stopped doing it. Mm-hmm. So that's our position on photogrammetry. If you are placing implants and they're not close together, you're going to need it. If your implants are all wonky, you're going to need it. But if you get enough implants close enough together and they're relatively parallel, it appears that you don't need it.
Dr. Damon, your rebuttal?
I would just say that placing your implants close together to avoid photogrammetry would not be an indication. So, photogrammetry. So I would say this: if you can get more space between your implants, more AP spread, limit 4 implants anterior to the sinus, doing that recipe and that principle, you are going to need photogrammetry.
Hey guys, I just want to take a beat to talk about one of our sponsors, SIN 360, specifically their full arch digital workflow. Here at the Fix Podcast, we've been using SIN for about 2 years, and one of our favorite integrations from this workflow is the Micron Mapper. Photogrammetry is an absolutely pivotal technology that has changed the way full arch is being done. It's allowing us to capture implant scans in under 5 seconds with micron level accuracy that's beating any type of scannable verification jig or analog verification jig, what have you, and it's able to do it in under 5 seconds. And guys, SIN 360 is absolutely giving this thing away right now for $699 a month for 39 months with 0% financing. Think about that, $699 per month. That's about the cost of an analog conversion or fabricating an analog verification jig, or maybe even just a scannable verification jig. So I highly, highly, highly recommend you try this out. It's one of the most pivotal investments that you can make in a full arch, digitally capable practice. To learn more, visit sin360.us/thefixpodcast and get yourself a Micron Mapper today.
So, just to be clear, we're not adding implants so that we can avoid photogrammetry. We're adding implants to reduce risk. And so it's a risk reduction protocol. And the main reason is if you just do a simple comparison of an all-on-4 to an all-on-5 with the same AP spread, you reduce your flexure of your prostheses 300%. You want to say it again? I'm going to compare an all-on-4 to an all-on-5 with the same AP spread. Okay? So the same AP spread, one has 5 implants and one has 4. And the prostheses are identical. They have the same material, everything's identical. The flexure of your prostheses is 300 times higher with an all-on-4 than an all-on-5. If you want to talk about long-term stability, if you do an all-on-4, you are going to have more fractures long-term than you do with an all-on-5. And if you go to an all-on-5, if you go from all-on-5 to all-on-6, you reduce it by like 700%. So we don't add implants to avoid photogrammetry. That would be silly. Everybody would know that would be silly. You don't. That's not how you think. You think about what's in the best interest of the patient. And when people say, Doc, you did 6 implants and you did longevity leveling, what are you going to do if they fail? Well, I told you I had 2 cases that failed, right? And they were smokers. They smoked and they failed, and they had stopped smoking after they failed. Okay, they didn't stop when they were supposed to, but they stopped afterwards, of course. So we did it again, right? Now you say, well, how could you have done it again? Well, if you look to first molar occlusion, you've got from first molar to first molar, from 6 to 6, you have 12 teeth. Could each and every one of us place an implant in each one of those locations today? If you said, I'm going to take out each tooth and place an implant in each tooth, and the answer is yes. We've seen them on the internet. We've seen the pictures of an implant in every tooth. We've seen those pans circulate on the internet. So we know that we can do that. So if I place 6 implants, what's between those 6 implants? Bone. So I could have 6 implants fail, and I could place 6 implants the next day in the in-between space, because there's in-between space. Now you have to do it guided because you can't fall into those holes, but you could do it that way. So I have a different perspective on crowding, so-called crowding the anterior by adding these risk reduction protocols. I don't look at them as a risk for a contingency plan in case those implants fail, because I know there's plenty of bone between it. And if it's an all-on-5, I have even more space, right? So I'm not looking to create a lot of space, because that creates mechanical complications. As we said at the very beginning of the podcast, we have 3 to 4 times more complications mechanically than we do biologically. So I'm not worried about that. And I'm also trying to keep my patients from smoking.
Yes. However, like when you have a biologic complication and you have filled the anterior maxilla with 6 implants, you now have a major problem on your hand to fix. I have not seen a case where if you have 6 implants anterior to the sinus, that you have any bone to go back in and place implants in between. It's typically on those cases, it's titanium heavy, and oftentimes there's reasons why we're redoing these cases. As you mentioned, you see lack of executed cases. I see them as well, and the challenge is you then iatrogenically create them to be a quad, or at least have 2 zygomas. Maybe you can get lucky and get them into the lateral nasal or nasal crest. But that is a significant concern that I see very often, and I am a very big proponent of eliminating that approach of having 6 implants anterior to the sinus for that reason, in a lack of execution or a biological failure. So also, we know this too from years ago when we would do 8 implants. Oftentimes multiple implants would wind up failing. So when we really treat a titanium deficiency with a lot of titanium, we now incorporate lack of blood flow into those areas. So by sticking with 4 implants anterior to the sinus, we are going to have fallback areas if we need them, and we are going to increase our blood flow. And where I will, encourage, if you want to avoid, or the way that I eliminate mechanical issues is by doing pterygoids on everybody. So now we are moving those implants away. We are building a strong bridge on 6 implants. We are just moving the supporting structures to the further edges of the mouth.
So I have a few notes on this, Dr. Stanley. So for one, do you have any? So you talked about, and it was very interesting. You talked about all in 4 versus all in 5 versus all in 6, controlling for the AP spread, everything being the same there, reducing the mechanical stress. Is there a study that correlates to that I could look up?
It's actually, I just calculated. I did the beam analysis myself. I haven't
Okay.
published it, but I'd be happy to send the
Sure.
content over to you so you can see it.
Please, yeah, no, I'd like to look into that as well, because there are similar studies, like Dr. Damon mentioned, the Wilkerson study that talks about reduction in biomechanical stresses with the use of pterygoids. So it's interesting to see both arguments being supported, or both very different modalities reaching a similar conclusion.
Well, then, Tyler, also you've got this Duyek study in 2000, and, they used in vivo stress and strain gauge abutments. And it was 13 patients, and they found that there was no statistical difference in stress or strain in 4, 5, or 6 implant scenarios when it was in a anterior approach, when they were anterior to the sinus.
Anterior to the sinus. Okay.
What stress were they measuring? Stress delivered to the bone?
They were looking at tension moments.
Tension moments. I don't know what that term is. So what happens is that if you apply an occlusal force to an all-on-4, or you apply the same occlusal force to an all-on-6, the force delivered to the bone is the same. So if their study was to set up to see if that it wouldn't change, the stress would change because you'd have more area with 6 implants than you would with 4, so you'd have less stress to the bone with the 6. But the flexure of the beam can be done. You don't need to do this in the mouth. It gets complicated when you do it in the mouth. You just do it on a piece of paper. So if I have 2 columns that are this far apart and I have a beam running across it, you guys know just inherently that if I move these columns in closer, the beam will flex in between. It will bend less. Okay.
Correct.
So if you're trying to cross a creek,
Yes.
and there's a narrow creek or a wide creek, if you try to cross the narrow creek with a 2x12, you can walk across it. But if the creek is really, really wide and you cross it with a 2x12, when you're in the middle, that board is sagging. Okay. So that's the idea behind your implants. If your implants are close together, your zirconia prostheses will flex less. If your implants are further apart, your zirconia will flex more. That's mechanical. You don't really want to do this as an in vivo study, because all that does is this muddy the water. So that's some master's student trying to get their master's degree in perio or something, or pros. It just muddies the water because it's basic engineering, right? So we don't need to make it more complicated than if the beam length is longer, it flexes more. You can just look it up on Google tonight, and you'll just see the beam length is how much it flexes. So if you do an all-on-4 or you do pterygoids and you spread that beam out, you better make sure you're going with a tall beam, because if you do this with an FP1, you guys that are listening, if you do this with a crown height space that's narrow and you spread your implants out really far, you're going to have more failures. You're going to have more mechanical failures, mechanical complications.
I mean, I'm not advocating for that in the FP1. In fact, I don't advocate for FP1s at all. But Elon Musk, he talks about engineers wind up over-engineering things, right? Things that don't even need to be optimized or engineered. And so I think going after beam length, well, sure, if you're in between, your zirconia is 20 millimeters or more, then you need something there. But I don't believe that over-engineering a titanium deficiency to reduce beam length is a wise thing to do, in my opinion. I don't think it doesn't need to be there.
Because you're concerned that if there's a failure, there's no recovery.
It's either a failure or lack of execution. On down the road, it's just I want to leave more bone. I want to leave more blood flow. And I want to be simpler. And if I want to then optimize, right? So where do I optimize? I optimize in the posterior, because I do think when you have a implant bridge that has 6 implants, I think it is phenomenal. And I think we agree on that. I think it's just kind of more where they need to be.
Mm-hmm.
I think, Dr. Stanley, do you think that it's predictable for most clinicians to get accurate scans for like these, like let's say you have a bunch of clinicians and they all are doing guided cases, right? So they're getting that parallel above. And it sounds like that's how, you're getting a lot of that parallelism is the cases are guided. You're able to, exactly where the multi-unit position is. You know that they're going to be parallel, so you get that scan and it looks great and it looks accurate. Is that something that your team has a lot of experience with? Because I find a lot of providers, even if let's say the scans are, the scan bodies, healing caps, whatever you're scanning, right, are parallel. In a bloody field, I just see a lot of clinicians just struggling with that. Is there anything that you do in particular that would be like a good gold nugget for clinicians to make that scanning easier for them, to prevent like these bloody fields, or how is your team doing it to get that 40 microns accuracy over and over and over again?
So most of the time we're doing the scan. So we're not doing. It's very rare for us to do the scan the day of the surgery. You see, because I already have a prosthesis made. So I'm not doing any sort of day of, very rarely do I do a day of surgery scan and then make the prosthesis immediately. I've done that a couple times for the sole purposes of measuring throughput, how fast I could do it. So I can do a full arch in an hour, like we've said a couple of times tonight. But when I did it where I didn't have a prefabricated provisional, I wanted to see how fast I could do it. So what I did is I placed 6 implants, and then I scanned them before I sutured. I placed 6 implants, and then I scanned them before I sutured bony. And the reason I did that is that I had the substance, right? So we blotted it, when we scanned it and everything, and then we delivered. The whole process took 3 hours. So still rather quick compared to some people's conversions that are taking 4 to 6 hours. Rather quick compared to some people's conversions that are taking 4 to 6 hours. Paint the implants, they scan, and then they build their provisional.
Well, we have a little, and that makes a lot of sense. And that's
but that took me 3 hours, and I can do it routinely with 1 hour with a prefabricated provisional. So I don't do it very often with 1 hour with a prefabricated provisional. So I don't do it very often.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
I wanted to clarify that just to make sure, because doing no photogrammetry in an office, I feel like might not be very predictable if you're designing same day and doing same day fabrication. I could see that being maybe something that people
Yeah.
are misconstrued, and maybe why you're getting some of that hate on some
Yeah.
of the
It's a
videos.
misunderstanding.
You're absolutely right. That's a great, Soren, that's a great clarification, because we just don't do, I think we've only done it twice. I think we're going to do another one coming up in the near future, because I'm always experimenting, as we said. I'm always trying different things.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to do another one coming up again. But it was successful. It's just that, if you do these cases, everybody will agree. Sometimes you have bleeders, right? And sometimes you don't. And sometimes you don't even know why. You can't even really predict it. You're like, is this person on aspirin? And they go, no, they're not on aspirin. They're not on any NSAIDs. They're not on any Plavix. You're trying to figure out why they're bleeding like a stuck pig, right? And on those cases, it's going to be hard to get a scan, right? It will be hard. So that's where photogrammetry would make a lot of sense.
So I have a couple things. For one, would you say then that because it all matters, how close the scan bodies are to one another, it doesn't necessarily mean that the implants themselves have to be close to one another, right? So now what we're seeing are scan bodies. You mentioned like the T-shaped scan bodies. Now we have Shining Elite, True Abutment has one where no matter where the implants are, they've got these arms that all point concentrically and bring all these implants together, and you can sort of now remotely relate the implants together using just a scan body. And that's a big thing that's going on right now, and people are trying to pivot away from photogrammetry, or at least provide a product that's just in a box. Everything's there in a box. So that's less of a question, more of just a note, really. And then second, the only thing I would challenge just slightly is when it comes to the parallelism of the multi-unit trajectory, right? Like how parallel all of our multi-units are. I would only say that I don't know that that's always ideal, especially in the maxilla, namely in the atrophic maxilla, and also in a case where we are hoping to do potentially class correction. So a lot of times, between myself and Soren and Caleb, we had a little bit of a contest on who could freehand the most parallel multi-units on the mandible to get down to single digit deviation. This cool thing the micron mapper does, you take a picture of it, tells you what your deviation is, and we all got there eventually. But on the maxilla, that's not something that I'm ever really shooting for. Right in the anterior, I'm almost invariably tilting my implants anteriorly to buck out a little bit to compensate for the resorption of a maxilla, especially one that's edentulous, right? So then how, if I were to try and get everything perfectly parallel and still have access holes that are in the cingulum, the cinguli of the anterior teeth and the, within the occlusal table of the posterior teeth, I don't think I could actually do that in a parallel way. I actually want all of my multi-use to be flaring out slightly buccally. So if I tried everything I could to get everything parallel, I think it would actually have very palatal access holes across the maxilla.
I think that's a really good point, Tyler. I would say that I do the exact same thing. So all of my screw holes are coming out the cingulum, and I'm always driving my digital planners to make sure that they're in the cingulum. They want to place them 3, 4, 5 millimeters lingual to the cingulum. And if you've ever gotten one of those provisionals back, that's just awful for the patient. They have this massive wad of plastic on the roof of the mouth, and they can't talk, and they're lisping. It's terrible. So I'm always driving them to do these cases the same way they would do a single implant. So that access hole has to be out the cingulum. So that's where they're at. So there is going to be divergence, but they are still more parallel than they're not, if that makes sense.
Okay.
The divergence between this one and this one might be quite a bit, but this one to this one.
Oh, the adjacents or something.
Yeah, as you're stepping around, they're not diverging too much around the horn, right?
I see the nuance. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Okay. Yeah, very good.
I would
Soren. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, before we start wrapping things up, this did go a lot longer than we had expected, and I loved the points for both of you guys. They were excellent, and I think it really comes down to like every provider has their own set of skills that they want to be proficient in, right? Like some providers, they're not going to want to have to get a guide for every single case. And in that situation, like freehand's wonderful. But if you want another tool to help, make the, like you were saying, some of these providers that you have seen do arches for the first time, right, are having excellent outcomes. guides can be excellent. But either way, I would like you guys both to get a chance to talk about your courses that you have, and if they want to go down that avenue, I'd love for you guys to have an opportunity to let our audience know where they might get some more information from you.
Sure, awesome. Well, I would say this: photogrammetry's Achilles heel is the fact that it has to be related to an intraoral scanner, right? So like, when you relate your pick to white healing caps or ICAM to scan bodies, or micron mapper, that's kind of the Achilles heel. And we've all seen cases where when you go to align your implant position to your jaw scan, there's some variability there. So that is definitely the Achilles heel. Now, granted, it is going to fit perfectly, but that is when you're going to get these occlusal issues, and then you kind of go down this whole occlusal rabbit hole of dealing with realigning jaw data and jaw scans. So we don't have the perfect restorative material. We don't have the perfect photogrammetry, and we don't have the perfect scanner. So, I assume eventually we will, but we'll just have to stay tuned. So, but right now it's, using all of these different things that are dealing with the limitations that the technology that we have is able to provide us. So, so with that, let's see. I've got the Texas Implant Institute. We do basically 2 courses. We do All on X Standard, and it's hands-on models. And day 2, we go into cadavers. And so we skyrocket your surgical experience. I've even had doctors that have done 1,000 arches come take my course, and they're like, man, I learned so much. And I was like, really? They're like, yeah, you taught me to hold the retractor the right way. You taught me to, do this with the periosteal elevator. So it's just, everybody has like different little bitty pearls that they just kind of pick up, and we go over, how to sell the cases, how to talk to the patients, and the whole history, treatment planning, all of that. And then we have our All on X advanced course for atrophic maxillas, which is zygomas, pterygoids, nasal crest, and it's really the same format: didactic lecture, hands-on models, and then day 2 we roll into cadavers. And
I'll advocate as well. I think Tyler and I both probably had done over 500 arches when we went to your first course, and I took away a lot of takeaways that were very, very helpful.
Awesome. Yeah. So we've been doing it since 2018, and we're, I guess, in 7th year. It's a little odd this year. My co-director Rick Klein passed away right after one of our courses, and so we're still trying to figure out who we're going to do the courses with. Right now I'm a little solo, but still get just great education. I primarily did all the lecturing, so that really doesn't change at all. So we are located in Dallas, and we always have a good happy hour and a good program, and we like to eat, drink, and be merry after. And
good steak too.
Yeah, come to Texas. But really, we also offer the mentoring program, and you guys are in our what is that? The WhatsApp group, and it's you guys get access to me, which is a good or a bad thing, because I'm going to call you out.
I can vouch for that.
and I'm going to hold you guys accountable, because at the end of the day, I want excellent results for your patients, and this is a lifelong learning thing. There is no one course you need to take. Maybe after this, I'll start sending people that need some help over to Dr. Stanley's course. And,
that's good.
Say, hey, you know what? I think freehand is not for you.
That's a good segue into Dr. Stanley, if you wouldn't mind. Talk about your courses.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate the time. As you guys probably note, I'm a bit of a talker.
We
but I'm
appreciate
not
it.
very good at selling myself. I can talk about implants all day long, but I usually turn that over to my team, my director of the institute, Stanley Institute. We're based out of just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina, about 8 minutes from the airport. So if you fly in, it's real convenient. We have basically Stanley Institute for Comprehensive Dentistry is the two primary educators are myself and my wife. My wife teaches the business of dentistry. So if you want to learn, so I like to say there's offense and there's defense in a business, right? Offense is how many cases can I do? How much money do I make? Defense is how much money do I keep? Okay. What my wife teaches you is the defense, which almost no one talks about, right? We're always like, well, if I add this skill set to my practice, I can generate more revenue for my team and for my family and get closer to my goals. But we don't talk about is how can we reduce our tax burden? How can we set up our corporations in a way that are beneficial for us in the long run? That's what she talks about. So she talks about the business dentistry. I talk about pretty much implants. Okay, so we have a onesie twosie course. It's 3 courses, but the first course is online. Okay, so the first is called Essentials 1, and that's the planning course. That's where you learn how to plan. So that's all online. And then Essentials 2 and 3 are also online. So if you're a remote watcher, you can have a lot of people that follow me overseas, so they can take the course remotely. So Essentials 2 and 3 are taught together now as a 3-day weekend. Okay, it's 3-day weekend. And I encourage people to come to the real course versus the hands-on versus the virtual one, because you get to do the hands-on parts. Okay, so we have all these hands-on experiments, and there's live surgery as well. So that's how we do the onesie twosies. For the full arch course, it's a 3-day course. That's your all on X course, and it covers everything. It covers from planning, it covers the surgery, it covers the digital workflow, all the way through the prosthetics. And the main goal with our institute is rather simple. Our goal is to reduce risk and improve outcomes for patients. And we do that predominantly through a pragmatic approach to implantology. So we look at some basic things that people really don't consider very often. And we've talked about many of those tonight. And hopefully that will give you guys some food for thought in terms of ways to reduce risk through basic mechanical principles. And we eliminate things like torque. We talk about torque in a way where you start to understand the limitations of that metric versus what most dentists do, because we've been trained a certain way, is we kind of stick to these old things, and that can lead you down a path where you're doing things that aren't in the best interest of the patient. So that's kind of it. And we have an anti-failure to launch program, which was rather negative. So then we called it a success program. So the anti-failure to launch program is that we were told that a lot of doctors come to courses, and after they take a course, they get really excited, but on Monday, they're back at the grind, right? And they don't have time to actually implement everything that they learned. So we have a success program to kind of walk you through your first few cases, and we mentor you and hold your hand through that whole process. So people really like that, and it really helps them get going, because once you get going, it's pretty powerful.
Cool. Well, listen, guys, there was definitely a world where I saw, bringing on the two of you guys who are very intelligent, very experienced, and have a lot of success in your own practice, albeit with almost polar opposite modalities. And, we railed off a few questions, and you guys went back and forth, and you both just stormed off and said, screw this is dumb. So I really appreciate that we didn't let the egos take over here at all, and we actually had a really lively and educational debate. I mean, there were a lot of topics that I think are going to be, talked about by our audience that listens to this. And I think there were a lot of challenges, for both camps, and looking across the aisle and saying, well, maybe there are some merits to this point, and vice versa. So I really just want to thank you both for coming on, bringing on your expertise, bringing on your experience, and just being mature about this, and living out the Socratic debate, and just talking about things in a way that is really just meant to benefit those that are trying to do more full arch and trying to benefit patients and trying to do better for people. Personally, I learned a lot here. I know Dr. Soren did as well. And I just, can't thank you guys enough for your time. We're running into about 2.5 hours. It was actually a record for our podcast. We never recorded that long. Well, maybe we have with Dr. Damon, but we did it in parts. So thank you guys so much for sparing your time and coming on. I really can't thank you enough.
Awesome.
That's my pleasure. Thanks, guys. I really appreciated it.
Awesome. You guys take care.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.